Hi everybody, welcome to Module 3. In this little quick video, I go over some of the main things in Module 3, including the PERMA model, the thing you're doing on well-being in general, as well as your test review, which I think is really important so you guys can take those tests one. By the way, you have 2 attempts to do test 1, so hopefully that will help you, okay? So let's get started. So the first one, I'm going to go over the PERMA model. So Seligman, who is actually the author of this PERMA model, right? He was the founder of positive psychology. And when he came in as the president of the Psychology Association, he used his address to actually change the focus on psychology. So much the focus was in the past based on illness and just trying to make people who are, psychologically not so well off, to make them kind of here in the middle, right? But he said, well, why don't we use psychology to actually bring people who are here, who are functioning, to actually be better off, to be well? Like, why don't we study what makes people well, right? And so that's when, in 1998, positive psychology was founded as a field, and now we have so much studies already, happiness courses, right? This weekend there's a happiness summit that FIU is actually doing. So we have a lot of information already what makes people happy. In the last module, remember, we talked about the difference between happiness, between well-being and life satisfaction, and also quality of life, which quality of life, we already said, is very different because it's basically a quantitative indicator such as education, your neighborhood, the safety, your health, right? Those kinds of things. Then your subjective well-being is how well you feel, right? That's kind of your life satisfaction. And you'll see that in this module, as part of your exercise, I'm having you guys complete the satisfaction with life scale to see where you guys are at, in terms of your life satisfaction, to see if you're happier than the average person, happier than people in the States or not, and to kind of see, how that's being measured in the world. So as one of the prime models for subjective well-being, we use the PERMA model. And the PERMA model stands for a couple of things. So P stands for positive emotion, E for engagement, R for relationships, M for meaning, and A for accomplishments. The article is in your module so you can read more about it. But what's interesting is that we already know a lot of this, right? In the last module, we already looked at that relationships really are your main predictor for happiness and well-being. They are, right? So positive emotion is really interesting because when we cultivate positive emotions, what it does to our brain, it opens up possibilities, right? Think about it. When you have a negative emotion, kind of a fight or flight, your brain kind of shuts down. You don't see possibilities. When you have positive emotions, hope, you start thinking more about what's possible, right? You broaden your horizons. One of the researchers called that the broaden and build theory, right? Actually, that we can use our brain, and when we stay with more positive emotions, we see more possibility, we can actually build more, right? And it makes us more resilient, of course. It makes more opportunities for us. So that is a really interesting thing. Positive emotions, also another research that we found is that and you'll see that in the module that you're doing on well-being, is that our brains are actually plastic, right? We have neuroplasticity, which means we can change our brains, which is something that we didn't know before, right? So through conscious actions such as the thoughts we think, the meditations we do, the visualizations we do, we can actually change our brain chemistry, right? So probably you've noticed that, when you have a bad day and you start thinking about something bad and you have a kind of an experience, all of a sudden more things like it come, right? And that works the other way too. So if we can kind of consciously get ourselves out of that, change our thoughts, by, using kind of affirmations, changing how we think about it, then we can also rewire that, right? So those are called neural networks. We can actually change the whole network by being conscious. But first we have to be conscious of what's actually going on. What are actually our beliefs deep down inside, right? And then we can change that. So positive emotions, super, super important. Engagement, we already talked about that. That's actually having a meaning, being engaged in something, right? Doing something that's worthwhile. Relationships, we already talked about that as well. Really, really important for your well-being. And so engagement has to do also with really being in the moment, being so much in there that you're kind of losing sight of, what time it is, how long you've been doing it, who's around you. You're just kind of what we call in the flow. And when you're in the flow, that adds to personal well-being as well. So it's a really interesting thing. And of course, that concept, you guys have probably heard about it, was created by Csikszentmihalyi a while back, right? And so I couldn't share is to go over this PERMA module to see, how it applies to you. Okay, the next thing that we talked about, I'm just going into your module right now, is you're actually going to go through a module I created on well-being during the times of COVID. So I created it, you guys will see, during the pandemic, and it was actually a grant I received called a rapid response grant. It was basically programs that we can do to help people. And so I said, well, well-being and resilience is something we should do. So this is a module I created for that. So you'll see that. And so I want you guys to go through this module, and then as part of your assignment for this module that we're doing now, go through one of the activities and actually do it and apply it to yourself. Okay, what I actually really want to talk about is your test review. So your test is 70 minutes. You actually have 2 attempts, like I said. It's based on everything from module 1 to 3. So what I'm going to do in the next couple of minutes is just go over some of the main things we already talked about to help you guys prepare for it. So the first thing I want you guys to remember for this test is some of the economic terms that we covered, right? When we talked about economic measures of progress. What is progress? Of course, now we know that, is that really progress? But we talked about the Big Mac Index. The Big Mac Index basically measures the true value of currency based on all the adjusted variables. So how much is a Big Mac in each country, right? We talked about the Human Development Index. The Human Development Index is basically something that measures well-being in different countries, right? By taking into account not just progress, but also other variables such as your life satisfaction, your quality of life, how long you live, the education, the healthcare system, those kinds of things, right? Of course, GDP is our typical kind of, measure of economic happiness. Then we also talked about the Happy Planet Index. So the Happy Planet Index, you guys will probably be really familiar because you did it for your assignment and you watched the video. So that has to do with how we measure progress, not just using economic terms, but also using how much planet we are actually using, right, to create those happy life years. And also taking into account measures of well-being, such as longevity, such as education, how well you are, how healthy you are, not just how long you live, but how healthy you are, right? And so one of the questions basically has you guys just matching those concepts. And I think just if you look again in those modules and just go over the concept, you should be able to measure those and match those. Then the next question is asking you to match again, and it's looking into those measures that I just talked about. So know the difference between quality of life, happiness, life satisfaction, and subjective well-being, okay? And so again, quality of life is a quantitative measure that looks at wealth, education, health, those kinds of things, right? Life satisfaction has to do with your subjective measure of how your life is going, but not just in this moment, over the long term, right? Happiness, in contrast, is basically saying how happy are you right now in the moment. It's an in the moment feeling, right? And subjective well-being is similar to life satisfaction. That's an evaluation of your life, right? It's also subjective, but it includes different things. So just look at those, right? Such as the presence of positive emotions, life satisfaction. Just think about that PERMA model that I was just talking about in this module. Okay, then we also talked about the 17 SDGs, right? And the pillars of sustainability, right? So the economic, social, and environmental. Just know those and know what the 17 SDGs are. Again, you don't have to write anything, just be able to recognize it, okay? We also talked about that GDP is not a really good measure, that even if countries are doing great on GDP, they might not be doing well based on life satisfaction or well-being, or even any of the other measures of kind of human well-being, right? And then we talked about the work of Juliet Shore. So just remember, and you guys did great, I loved reading your posts. Just remember that she really argued, because she studied all the economic data, right, over the last couple of centuries. And she said that while we've become 80% more productive, right, we work 200 hours a year more. Why? And again, she just explained that it was that consumerism, that we chose to just have more stuff, more bigger garages, bigger houses to put all this stuff, bigger washing machines, and so on. And we've basically chosen as a society to consume more, right? And so that's how she explains that this whole kind of increase in 200 hours a year came, right? And so basically what we've done is we've chosen money over time, right? Basically fueled by consumerism. However, that is changing. Another similar theory that we talked about is Max Weber's Protestant work ethic. You guys can also Google that again. But really, I just brought that up because he also explains basically how capitalism came about, how we actually justified working, right, as like a means to be a good person. Because when you think about society today, right, so many people, it's almost like a status symbol. Like if you're, it's like who's busier, who's doing more, right? Because it's how we justify we're doing good in the eyes of God, right? That was really the thing. So somebody who worked was doing God's work, was a good person, right? And somebody who was idle was kind of like open to be influenced by the devil, right? And so that is an interesting thing. So just remember that the Protestant work ethic, it explains that basically we receive salvation by doing God's work, by being virtuous people, and that means working, right? Just know from the research what factors have been shown to influence well-being and life satisfaction. We talked about a lot of them, right? And just know some of that. Also, just kind of know how to define resilience. Remember, resilience is our ability to bounce back from something. It's our ability to overcome challenges, our ability to kind of reinvent ourselves after something happens, like a pandemic, like a loss of something, right? You guys did fabulous in your assignment, so this shouldn't be a problem, but conspicuous consumption, again, Thorsten Webler's idea of that leisure class, that we're trying to emulate that leisure class, right? Everybody is trying to show that they have a higher status than they actually do by conspicuously consuming things, such as leisure experiences, such as, nice, in the past it was like nice silverware, nice clothes, right? Many of you guys really wrote about that nowadays it's not so much that leisure class. Like think about the English aristocrats that were out there and people were trying to have the same things. Now it's really influencers, right? And those trends that we have of like, we need the newest phone or the newest clothes or the trend changed, right? Those kinds of things. So you guys really talked about that really well. So just know what it is, be able to recognize that concept, right? What else? Oh, we also talked about a couple of things in American society. One of the things that's really interesting is that we are the only country without an actual law guaranteeing paid leave, right? So in terms of time off from work, we're doing pretty crappy compared to other industrialized nations. And even with that, what's really, really interesting is that most Americans actually don't take all of their vacation days, right? And so we're wondering, why is that, right? And so there's a lot of factors we could talk about, the guilt they feel or the stress that they feel that all of their work is going to accumulate and then they have to catch up even more, work even harder. There's also, employers who say, oh, without you, I can't do anything. I need you here. You can't take off that much time. So there's all of these things, right? So those things are true that the US is the only industrialized nation without a law guaranteeing paid leave, right? Nowadays, though, however, especially with COVID, we talked about that some of these trends are shifting. So one of the things is that people really want more work-life balance. Many of you guys have talked about that also in your posts, right? They want more freedom. They want more experiences. They don't want to be just in that kind of consume work cycle. Or if they consume, they want to consume experiences more than things, right? And so some of the ways that we talked about in this class so far that we can make that happen is the 4-day work week, right? Which actually has been shown to lead to more productivity, to more happiness, to more satisfaction at work, and it's way more sustainable because we live greener. A lot of you guys talked about that also in your posts, and I really appreciated that, right? So we can work less and still be just as productive. We can also downshift in other ways, and that's what that's called. Downshifting just means that we're making a change in our life to consciously do something different, right? So we could have more time by working less, by owning less, making a lifestyle change, maybe doing something remote. Now we have the whole idea of digital nomad, which I think it's just really fascinating. People who are, basically working remote forever and traveling the world doing that. And so there's job sharing where people actually can have one job split by two people. So like, for example, a teacher who comes in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the other one Tuesday, Thursday, those kinds of things. So there's some interesting things how we can make that happen, right? And why do we talk about all of that? One, because we need to know what makes people happy so that we can actually then impact policies, right? Sustainable policies that increase actually human well-being. But on top of that, what I think is so fascinating is that when we make those choices to live well, we also do increase sustainability, just like it's been shown for the 4-day work week, right? We make more sustainable choices because we're not in that constant rush, that constant treadmill that runs, right? And so that's the last question on the test, is that living healthier and happier actually decreases your environmental footprint, right? So we teach another class in this curriculum where you measure your greenhouse gas emissions, you measure your carbon footprint, and you can actually see that when you live well, when you adopt some of those sustainable well-being techniques, you also just lead a lifestyle that's better for the planet. And I think that was also shown on the Happy Planet Index video, right? That you can live well and it doesn't have to cost the planet. So again, you have 2 attempts on this test. Good luck. And I hope you enjoy this little module I put up on well-being, and you can use some of these to really make your life even better. I wish you guys best of luck on the exam, and I'll see you guys in module 4. Ciao.